Hello everyone, and welcome to my CBS Wonderful Today channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. How could you? Fabricator Victoria slaps Claire because her and Holden's secret is revealed. The pressure in the lustrous, sunlit corridors of Newman Enterprises was nearly palpable as Victoria Newman stormed into the office, her heels clicking sprucely against the polished bottom, echoing like shots in the quiet morning. Her eyes blazed with fury, nostrils glaring, and her hands quivered with an admixture of wrathfulness and heartache. She had just uncovered a secret that she no way imagined would cut so deep, a disclosure that hovered not only her sense of trust but the veritably foundations of her formerly fragile relationship with Holden. She had tried to remain calm, had tried to erect together the strange inconsistencies she had noticed over the once many weeks, the hushed phone calls, the unforeseen changes in schedules, the subtle facades that didn't relatively add up, but nothing had prepared her for the cold wave, unmistakable verity she now held in her hands. The envelope had been small, unpretentious, put away in a hole Holden allowed no bone would ever open, and outside were dispatches, photos, and a series of emails that made it all sorrowfully clear Holden and Claire had been hiding commodity monumental, commodity that Victoria's heart refused to forgive. Her lips quivered as she approached Claire, who sat in the plush, cream-colored president across the office, her expression fluttering between guilt and guard, the kind that comes from being caught red-handed but trying desperately to salvage a shred of quality. Victoria's voice was low at first, nearly a tail, but there was a venom in it that could cut sword. "How could you, Claire?" she demanded, her eyes welling with gashes she refused to exfoliate in front of anyone. Claire shifted uncomfortably, her posture rigid, and opened her mouth to respond, but the words that came out were weak, faltering, and entirely inadequate. She tried to explain, tried to justify, tried to frame it as commodity innocent, commodity necessary, commodity anyone in her position would have done, but Victoria's mind was formally contending through the backstabbings, the facades, the manipulations, and nothing Claire said could attune the storm that had been unleashed inside her. And also, in a moment that sounded to stretch into eternity, Victoria lifted her hand, and the poke landed with a sharp, reverberative crack that filled the office like thunder. The sound was shocking, visceral, and it silenced everyone in the room. Claire's head snapped back, her eyes wide with unbelief, her mouth open, and for a twinkle, there was only the pounding of hearts, the sharp sting on Claire's impertinence, and the cold wave, icy light of a woman who had been wronged in the most intimate, particular way possible. "Fabricator!" Victoria screamed, the word echoing against the walls, resonating in every corner of the office, a verdict, and blameworthiness, a protestation of war. Holden, who had been standing quietly near the doorway, firmed in his own shock and guilt, could only watch as the scene unfolded, unfit to defend himself, unfit to stop the tidal surge of consequences that was about to crash down upon them all. Victoria's mind flashed back to the night she had spent awake, fussing, distrusting, questioning herself, wondering if she had misconstrued the signs, and now all of it came into sharp focus. The verity was inarguable, the treason unmistakable, and the pain unsupportable. She wanted to scream, to cry, to throw effects, to make Holden and Claire feel the weight of the desolation they had caused, but rather, she simply stood there, pulsing, her casket heaving, trying to reuse the depth of the deception. Claire, still reeling from the poke, reached out as if to apologize, but Victoria quailed as though Claire's touch were toxic. You don't get to touch me. Not after what you've done," Victoria wrangled, her voice pulsing with fury and anguish. She could feel the wrathfulness washing up, mixing with a profound sadness. A sense of loss not just for the trust broken but for the future she had imagined, the life she had planned, the love she had believed in. Every word, every regard, every stolen moment between Claire and Holden now felt like a cutter ringing in her heart, and there was no going back. In the tense silence that followed, Victoria turned sprucely on her heel and walked toward the window, the megacity skyline of Genoa City stretching out before her, flashing and indifferent to the mortal heartache unfolding within its walls. She pressed her hands against the cool glass, feeling the bite transuded into her skin, and closed her eyes, trying to undergird herself, trying to flash back who she was beyond the fury and the pain. Holden stepped forward, eventually chancing his voice, a blend of despair and guilt, trying to explain, to maintain for understanding, but Victoria was beyond hearkening. "I trusted you," she said, her voice breaking despite her sweats to maintain countenance. "I trusted both of you, and you prevaricated to me. You betrayed me in the worst way possible." Her words hung in the air like a storm pall, heavy, hanging, insolvable to ignore. Claire tried again, softer this time, gashes running down her face, but Victoria turned down, unintentional to give her the satisfaction of a response, unintentional to let the treason go unpunished, unintentional to forgive what had been done. She could feel the fire inside her, a burning, searing rage that mixed with heartache, and she knew that effects would no way be the same again. Not with Claire, not with Holden, not with the life she had imagined for herself. And as she stood there, silhouetted against the sun, her figure rigid with a blend of grief and defiance, the enormity of the secret that had been revealed sank in. Connections would fracture, alliances would deteriorate, and the fallout from this disclosure would ripple through every corner of her life, leaving a trail of shock, wrathfulness, and anguish that couldn't be fluently repaired. Yet, beneath the wrathfulness, beneath the treason, there remained a spark of determination, a core of sword that had always defined Victoria Newman. She'd survive this. She'd reclaim her power, her quality, and her life. And although Holden and Claire had allowed they could manipulate and deceive her, Victoria knew one thing with absolute certainty: the verity always comes out, and when it does, the consequences are ineluctable, and in this case, explosive. The office sounded to hold its breath, the air thick with pressure, the echoes of the poke still ringing in everyone's cognizance, and in that moment, it was clear that nothing in Genoa City, or in Victoria Newman's world, would ever be the same again. The treason had been monumental, the wrathfulness inarguable, and the shock absolute, setting the stage for a series of competitions, exposures, and emotional reckonings that would ripple through every relationship, every trust, and every alliance, leaving no bone untouched, no secret safe, and no heart unscarred. And Victoria, standing altitudinous despite the storm raging inside her, knew that the road ahead would be long, painful, and enduring, but she'd navigate it on her terms, with the ferocity, cunning, and adaptability that only a Newman could command, icing that every taradiddle, every treason, and every secret would have its consequences, and that in the end, she'd crop stronger, wiser, and unbroken, a force to be reckoned with in the Machiavellian world of Genoa City. Victoria's wrathfulness didn't subside after the poke. It boosted, twisting into a curled storm of fury and unbelief as she took a step back, her eyes no way leaving Claire, who now sat firmed, her fritters gripping the arms of the president as though it were the only thing keeping her predicated against the surge of Victoria's wrath. The room sounded lower now, the air thick with pressure, suffocating, and the sound of her own twinkle thundering in her cognizance sounded nearly louder than the chaos girding her. She could feel the burn of demotion and treason, and every fiber of her being screamed that nothing could ever make this right again. Holden, still embedded in the doorway, shifted nervously, trying to meet Victoria's aspect, hoping ever to calm the tempest he'd helped produce, but each regard only sounded to pour gasoline onto the deers. "Victoria," he started, his voice low, reluctant, as if speaking too loudly might shatter the fragile balance of the office entirely. But she cut him off with a sharp, incredulous laugh, one that had no humor in it, only the raw unbelief of a woman who had allowed. She knew someone privately and suddenly realized she did not. "Doen't. Just doen't speak. You doen't get to explain anything, not now, not ever, until I decide if I indeed want to hear a single word from either of you again," she said, her tone icy, precise, measured yet deadly in its delivery. Her words carried the weight of someone who had been betrayed, someone who understood consequences, someone who knew how to apply the power of her position both emotionally and professionally. Claire's mouth opened and closed again, a delicate attempt at kick, but Victoria's eyes, sharp and unvarying, silenced her. In that moment, Victoria's mind replayed everything leading up to this disastrous disclosure: the quiet gloamings when Holden had been vague about his whereabouts, the whispers she allowed were trivial, the half-trueness, the fugitive phone calls, all of which now painted a mosaic of falsehoods, dishonesty, and hidden dockets that had been precisely concealed under the veneer of fellowship and trust. Each recollection soaked, a memorial that she had been manipulated and that her instincts, those generally so sharp, had been dulled by a eyeless faith in the people she watched about most. Her hands quivered slightly, not from weakness, but from the sheer intensity of emotion coursing through her. Rage, heartache, unbelief, and a spark of vengeful determination that had always been her guard in times of extremity. She could feel the power dynamics shifting in the room, the silent judgment of staff skimming through the office doorways, curious, shocked, and hugely charmed by the drama unraveling before them, and she knew that the fallout would ripple far beyond just these walls. Holden, seeing her resoluteness, tried again to reach her, his voice more critical, an admixture of reason and despair. "Victoria, please, you have to understand." But Victoria's hand shot up, stopping him mid-sentence. "Understand? Understand what? That you and Claire allowed. You could lie to me, deceive me, use my trust as if it were nothing?" she cried, her voice breaking slightly under the weight of emotion. "Do you indeed know what it feels like to be betrayed by someone you love, by someone you believed would no way hurt you? Do you have any idea what it's like to realize that every word, every smile, every participated moment was a taradiddle?" Claire's shoulders drooped, gashes now freely streaming down her face, but Victoria slightly noticed. Her mind was formally contending forward, thinking of the counter-accusations of what had just been revealed. Trust broken between her and Holden would mean re-evaluating every cooperation, every decision they had made together at Newman Enterprises. Trust broken with Claire meant reassessing every fellowship, every moment of fidelity, every smile that had formerly felt genuine. And in that curve of chaos, Victoria could feel her grandmotherly instincts for strategy remonstrating in. What this disclosure meant not only for particular connections but for the delicate balance of power in Genoa City, for alliances that could shift overnight, for reports that would now be questioned, scanned, and manipulated by anyone with half a mind to take advantage. She could see it all: captions in the original papers, whispers in the corridors, abettors turning into adversaries, opportunists circling like harpies. And yet, amid the whirlwind of implicit chaos, there remained a deep, unwavering core of determination. She'd not be the victim then. She'd reclaim her narrative, her control, her quality. Claire's soft, pulsing reason slightly registered as Victoria continued to pace the office, the polished bottoms reflecting her heels and the pressure in her posture. The staff, preliminarily hidden behind office doors, now surfaced subtly, drawn by the audible echoes of crying, the unmistakable crack of a poke, and the inarguable air of drama that girdled the Newman family at all times. They rumored to each other, eyes wide with shock, doubtful whether to intermediate or simply bear substantiation to the fallout. Meanwhile, Holden's attempts to regain the situation came more hopeless, more visible, yet Victoria's attention had shifted entirely to her own studies, spinning, calculating, re-evaluating every trust she had placed in both of them. She recalled moments she had formerly believed were intimate, uncommunicative exchanges between herself and Holden, private feasts, late-night calls where she allowed her mate had participated everything, commended everything, but now she knew it had all been tainted, manipulated, disposed by dishonesty. And Claire, sitting there with her face flushed, shoulders hunkered, hands shaking, no longer the confident, composed woman she had formerly seen, now appeared small, vulnerable, nearly pitiful under the weight of Victoria's storm. The air itself sounded to coo with pressure, charged like electricity before a lightning strike, and for a moment, time itself braked, as though the macrocosm had broke to let this battle gomorrah by, engraving itself on every bystander, every mind, every heart in the room. Victoria's aspect softened ever so slightly, but only enough to remind herself she was mortal, able of both emotion and revenge, able of grief and scrupulous planning. The treason had left scars, yes, but scars were monuments of survival, of assignments learned, of strength gained. Holden stepped forward again, cautiously, contending in a quieter, more restrained voice. "Victoria, please don't make this worse than it formerly is." But she shook her head, hair persuading, expression hardening, resolve shaping. She didn't need his authorization to feel hurt, nor did she need his cooperation to legislate consequences. She could formally fantasize the way she'd take to cover herself, her company, her family, her character. Claire, now reduced to stammering justifications, could do nothing but endure the weight of Victoria's judgment, the shock and the sting of the poke resonating in her mind, reminding her that conduct have consequences, and that some backstabbings, some facets, cut deeper than any words could ever heal. Victoria's eyes darted to the window. The skyline of Genoa city stretched before her, indifferent, vast, and constant, a silent substantiation to the mortal drama unfolding below. She took a slow, steadying breath, feeling the power of choice settle into her casket. She could let this destroy her, let this define her, let this heartache consume her, or she could rise over, exact her own terms of justice, and crop stronger, wiser, more watchful than ever ahead. And in that moment, as Claire's gash-barred face and Holden's guilt-ridden posture filled the fringe of her vision, Victoria Newman, heir at law to the Newman fortune and inheritor of a family erected on adaptability, manipulation, and unyielding determination, made the silent, unvarying decision that no secret, no treason, no taradiddle, would ever have the power to break her spirit entirely. She'd endure, she'd avenge, she'd command respect, and she'd do so in a manner only a Newman could, with perfection, strategy, and an ironclad determination that left no room for mistrustfulness, no space for conciliation without conditions, and no possibility that the coming chapter of this unfolding drama would be anything lower than explosive, engaging, and hugely indelible for every soul in Genoa city who dared to cross the path of Victoria Newman. And as she turned sprucely, shoulders squared, aspect steely, leaving Claire to reuse the consequences of her dishonesty in silence, the office sounded to exhale inclusively, realizing that a storm had arrived, one that would change the lives of everyone involved ever, reshaping connections, reports, and power dynamics in ways no bone could yet prognosticate, but that everyone knew would be monumental, leaving the megacity ever marked by a reproach that would ripple through every corridor, every office, every heart, and every secret that had been so precisely guarded until now. Victoria didn't allow herself the luxury of emotion for long. Grief and treason were transitory companions compared to the razor-sharp clarity of her resoluteness, and formally her mind began to index every possible consequence, every implicit supporter, and every vulnerability that had been exposed in the wake of Claire and Holden's deception. The sting of the poke still dallied in the air, but she pushed it away, forcing herself to concentrate on the larger picture: the Newman name, her character, her power, and the imperturbable verity that in Genoa city, secrets were currency and treason could be fatal if left unbounded. Claire, meanwhile, drooped lower in her president, shoulders pulsing, hands gripped over her stomach, as though bracing herself for the judgment that was coming, the discipline that was both ineluctable and intimidating. Holden tried again, further hopeless now, taking a conservative step forward, the despair in his eyes betraying the calm facade he tried to maintain, but Victoria's hand shot out formally more, a silent command that he stop, a clear assertion that he'd surpassed, that his words, no matter how sincere or penitent, would have no sway then. She had always been decisive, trained in both business and social warfare by the sharpest minds in the Newman dynasty, and now, further than ever, those assignments were in full force. Her aspect swept across the office, noticing subtle responses she had preliminarily overlooked: the adjunct firmed at the doorway, the intern skimming out from behind a form press, the office director whose eyes widened in shock and curiosity. Each regard was a reflection of the ripples she had set in stir, substantiation that her particular storm was about to come a city-wide spectacle. And as she turned back to Claire, Victoria's mind began to renewal every hassle, every subtle sign, every rumored discussion that had sounded inoffensive at the time but now lusted with minatory clarity: the grins participated in private, the moments Holden had dithered to meet her aspect, the unforeseen absences explained with flimsy defenses, the nearly inappreciable pressure whenever Claire was around. Each memory was a dagger, each recollection a memorial that nothing was ever as it sounded in a world where trust was a fragile luxury and deception was an art form perfected by those who had learned the rules of survival in Genoa city. Victoria could feel the palpitation of wrathfulness and treason in her modes, a metrical, pertinacious shower that demanded action, demanded recognition, demanded consequences that would be felt long after the original shock had passed. She wanted Claire to understand the depth of her treason, the breadth of the damage done, the sheer audacity it took to manipulate not only her heart but her mind, her instincts, her sense of judgment. The words Victoria had formerly reserved for business accommodations, for boardroom competitions, now poured freely, visceral and unrestrained. Every blameworthiness, every pointed observation, every bit of verity she had kept suppressed for the sake of civility now set up its voice, sharp and slice, leaving Claire reeling in the fate of her own conduct. Holden.